Ada, ada better. The
So the lamp has been lit, and now uh, I would like our head. Small memento from on behalf of the University Department of English. And now I would like Dr. Punita Jha to felicitate our Dean, Professor Preeti Jha, who is also the head of Maithili Department. Now I request Professor Kulanand Yadav to felicitate our HOD, Professor A.K. Bachchan. As all of you know, that the chief guest on this auspicious occasion is Professor Dolly Sinha, the Pro-Vice Chancellor of Lalit Narayan Mithila University, Darbhanga. Prior to this present assignment, she held the post of Pro-Vice Chancellor of Patna University, Patna, a PhD in physics from IIT Delhi. She has also served as Dean Students Welfare in Patna University. She has been the head of the department, and she has been the principal of Magad Mahila College, Patna. We are all aware of the enthusiasm that she exudes, the extent of commitment with which she takes up any work, whether as a researcher or an administrator. She has been involved in education for nearly 4 decades, and we are indeed fortunate to have her as our Pro-Vice Chancellor, because she is known to be an institution builder and has genuine interest in students' affairs. I now request our Honorable Pro-VC Ma'am to speak a few words of encouragement and bless the success of the conference. Please.
morning and very good morning to all of you and namaskar. We have on the dais distinguished personalities, the Dean of Humanities, Professor Preeti Jha, the Head of the Department of English, Dr. A.K. Bachchan, Professor Arunima Sinha, Dr. Punita Jha, Dr. Phulanand Yadav, Dr. A.K. Singh, Dr. Sanket Kumar Jha, all associated with this program. So on behalf of the university and on my personal note, I congratulate you all, Dr. Bachchan and your team, for organizing this conference on emerging trends in Indian English literature. This is a very relevant topic and I feel extremely happy that you have invited a distinguished team of resource persons, including Professor R.P. Singh of Lucknow University, Professor Vinod Mishra of IIT Roorkee, Professor U.S. Ojha of JP University, Chhapra. Again, I welcome all the resource persons who have happily accepted our request to be part of this one-day conference and enrich our faculty members and research scholars. Thank you, all the resource persons. Namaskar. A special namaskar to all of you. I also welcome the students very much because whatever I am today, I always consider myself as a teacher, and whenever I am among the students, I am in the most happy state of mind. So all my students, very welcome to you. It's nice sight to see you all here. The research scholars, there are some principals and head of the departments among us. I also welcome them. Now, regarding the topic of the conference, as I mentioned earlier, it's a very relevant topic. As we know, the importance of English in our society, the Indian society. The English language has a privileged place in Indian society. It is the language of the former colonizer and remains the language of getting on, the language of business, the language of higher education, the language identified above all with modernity. The best of the novelists bring to their writing an awareness of the inequality of access to English and the problems of communication between different classes and cultures within India. There are many new trends and developments in the field of Indian English literature in all its three genres: Indian English poetry, Indian English drama, and Indian English fiction. We have a gallery of writers who are writing, translating, translating into English. Creativity, translation, transaction, Dalit literature, diasporic writing, post-colonial writing, postmodern and feministic writings are emerging speedily in Indian English. Of the recent Indian English fiction writers, instead of depicting a typical Indian cultural background and traditional Indian cultural ethos, exhibit global concerns through the presentation of multicultural reality. The expansion of the scope of their thematic concerns and development of new forms of expression have won them many prestigious international awards, including the Nobel Prize won by B.S. Naipaul. The conflicting interests of different communities and has adapted itself to the needs of the Indians. Today, Indian English as well as Indian writing in English has got its own identity. The most interesting aspect of the fiction at the turn of the present century from the Indian point of view is the emergence of new talent. A number of recent Indian novelists have produced significant novels marking a mark in the literary world. Feminism, with its thrust on women's concerns, has always brought a major change in contemporary English fiction. Women writers seem to deliberately concentrate on women's experiences. Their concern for the marginalization and subordination of women in different walks of life can be ascertained from the presentation of different forms of women's life in their works. A notable change in their depiction of women character can be observed from the delineation of the women different from their traditional counterparts. Instead of submissive, docile, and passive women, we found now assertive and strong women characters in the writings of contemporary Indian English women writers. The new aspects of women's experiences, fictionalized as a form of feminist understanding of life, and find expression in novels of Nayantara Sehgal, Shobha De, Kamala Markande, Anita Nair, Manju Kapoor, Namita Gokhale, Geeta Hariharan, Kiran Swami, Anita Desai, Bharti Mukherjee, Shashi Deshpande, and Arundhati Roy, and many others. Another significant development that brings out a perceptible change in Indian English fiction is the depiction of cross-cultural context. Earlier, this theme was mainly concerned with the conflicting aspect of East and the West. New novelists of 1980s, such as Upamanyu Chatterjee, have tried to demonstrate that. On the contrary, the Indian tang is not pure essence but the masala mix of a culture that has always been able to appropriate influences from outside the subcontinent. From this point of view, English is implicated in the polyphony of Indian languages, and its colonial authority becomes relative as it enters the very complexities which it describes. The English writing is changing its trend of depicting social realism of the pre-independence period to magic realism of the post-independence period, and now in the modern era to global concerns. G.B. Desai's All About Her Truck is the most startling example of magic realism. Quite a few of the post-independence English novelists have followed the tradition of magic realism set by G.B. Desai. It only got strengthened in the hands of Salman Rushdie after Desai. Salman Rushdie's first novel of The Midnight Children, which won the Booker's Prize, is an outstanding example of the trend of magic realism. Shashi Tharoor's first novel, the great Indian novel, Boman Desai's The Memory of Elephants, Ranjit Lal's The Crow Chronicles, Amitabh Ghosh, The Circle of Reason, and many other authors' books narrate the typical example of magic realism. Another trend is the translation of regional literature into English. For example, almost the entire work of Rabindranath Tagore, Subramaniam Bharati, Vijay Tendulkar, Premchand, and Vasudevan Nair are available now in English, not only for the English people but also for the people of the world who have some knowledge of English as a second foreign language. The new trend and development is the Dalit literature, which has also been translated into English. The Indian popular fiction portrays the taste of the Indian writers and hence can be analyzed as a cultural study material. When we talk of English poetry, the Indian English poetry has been a rich contribution to the world of literature. Historically, the Indian writers in English, both during pre-independence and post-independence, have been extremely rich in their unique ways of presenting human emotions. New trends are now introduced by the women poets namely Kamala Das, Mamta Kalia, Sujata Bhatt, Meena Alexander, and Smita Agrawal. Kamala Das, who wrote poems in a confessional style using the three-verse form, subverts the so-called sacred institution of marriage and love that she exposes as a mere stage for power games for the sexes. The poems of the other women poets are beautiful pieces of their literary talent and craftsmanship. There are various trends found in their poems which have given new meaning and direction to the heritage of English poetry written by women poets of the modern era. Similarly, the English drama has also observed lots of change from the pre-independence to post-independence and the modern era. I am sure that during this one-day e-conference, you will be exposed in much detail about how the Indian English language and literature has evolved. Today, Indian English as well as Indian writing in English has its own identity and value too. So I once again wish all of you that make this conference very successful. I am confident that it will be successful. Enrich yourself, listen carefully to the academicians who who gladly accepted our request to enrich our students. Thank you once again.
Thank you, ma'am, for your lovely scholarly speech. Being a person of science also, you have outlined so well about Indian English literature and emerging trends in Indian English literature. Now, it should have been done earlier, but now I invite Professor A.K. Bachchan, the HOD, to introduce the theme of the e-conference and also the presidential address. Thank you.
So, Honorable Vice Chancellor, ma'am, you have spoken so well. You have given us detailed analysis of the topic. I think I have nothing to say because you have described everything of this e-conference, national e-conference. You have described the emerging trends in Indian literature very well. So I am grateful to you that you have delivered a fine lecture on this topic. You know, but I have to say, I am obliged to the key speakers who are online. Emerging trends in modern Indian English literature. Each age has its own characteristics, revealing that particular period and its literature. The Renaissance age is known for the origin of intellectual liberty, while the 18th century literature demonstrates how poetry should follow exact rules. The age of Romanticism verbalized love for nature, and the Victorian literature depicts compromise between individual and society. So it is very difficult to define one typical characteristic of 20th and 21st century. This age is full of experimentation, and it can be described as transitional, experimental, anxious, self-interrogating. 2. Indian English literature today offers us an opportunity to discover Indian consciousness and sensibility. It is emerging as the voice of India through its portrayal of realistic picture of society. A few distant trends that are dominant in the late 20th century and the early 21st century are as follows. The most important and remarkable point of Indian English literature is that while the writers write in a foreign language, their subjects, plots, characters, ideas, and themes remain Indian. From the novels of R.K. Narayan to those of Salman Rushdie, Shashi Tharoor, and V.S. Naipaul, we have ideas of homeland, rootlessness, and their personal feeling towards their country. The problem of identity is linked with Indianness. The Indian English writers suffered from two serious problems. Firstly, they want to search their identity in Indian, and secondly, they want to establish themselves in the vast domain of world literature. The modern Indian English literatures are in the state of dilemma in the presentation of cultural identity. They are always in conflicting positions to locate them. Writers like Mulk Raj Anand in his novel Untouchable and Gauri, Bakshi Sirva in her novel Ice Candy Man, Kamla Markande in her novels Nectar in a Sieve and A Handful of Rice have devised regional languages like Hindi, like Punjabi, Farsi, etc. with standardized English. The major reason has been the dire need of introducing the first nations with the idea that the nations once being ruled are not at all without literature and culture. Another significant development that brings out a perceptible change in Indian English literature is the depiction of cross-cultural context. Earlier, this theme was mainly concerned with the conflicting aspects of East and West. Indian life was presented to highlight its exotic features that had a special appeal for the Western readers. The Western reason and scientific point of view juxtaposed against the Indian perspective governed by faith in spiritualism and highly emotional response to life formed the major thrust in the writings of earlier Indian English fiction writers. The two different countries in question, two different cultures in question were seen from the consciousness of the colonizers. The essential qualities of both the cultures were considered to result in a conflict. The differences between the Eastern and the Western cultures depicted in this kind of fiction were treated to be fundamental, transcendental, and eternal. Although diasporic writers like Bharti Mukherjee, Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni, Jhumpa Lahiri, and Kiran Desai have different windows on the world of their lives in India and abroad. They too share the common concerns of Indian writers in terms of cultural bondings and bindings that help and also hinder us from evolving into a higher level of life, especially a higher standard of peaceful life for all Indians all over the world. Kiran Desai's The Inheritance of Loss is a poignant story of an Indian unable to live here and there or anywhere, for the social and political forces are against him. The trend of magic realism, which was conspicuous by its absence in the novels produced before independence, became the dominant genre in the post-independent period. Emergence of magic realism, as M.K. Nayak says, I quote, "Magic realism is a jealous mistress. Once you set up house with her, social realism becomes an unwelcome guest," I unquote. G.V. Desani's All About Hatter is the most sterling example of magic realism. Salman Rushdie's first novel, The Midnight Children, which won the Booker of Booker's Prize, is an outstanding example of the trend of magic realism. Another trend is the translation of regional literatures into English. For example, almost the entire works of Premchand, Rabindranath Tagore, Subramanya, Bharati, Vijay Tendulkar, Vasudevan Nair are available in English, not only for the English people, but also for the people of the world who have some knowledge of English as a second and foreign language. Yet another trend is the emergence of writers from the Dalit and other marginalized sections of the society. A remarkable work of international standing is Bama's Karukku. Yet another work in this category is Om Prakash Valmiki's Juthan. These writings erase the distinction between fact and fiction. Some autobiographies of these writers are presented so vividly that they claim their status of great fiction. Further, the shocking plays of Mahesh Dattani and Manjula Padmanabhan belong to a different strand of margin away from the mainstream literature. A dominant trend in the motivational and autobiographical work of prominent personalities like Dr. Abdul Kalam, Wings of Fire and Turning Points are both scientific and political in their overtones, but do not lose sight out on guiding the Indian youth for a better India. Associated with this trend is the biographical writing of well-known political, industrial, social, sports, spiritual, and media leaders. Every president, every prime minister of India has at least one biography on him or her. Indian industrialists like J.R.D. Tata, Dhirubhai Ambani, Aditya Birla have also found a place among biographers. Actors like Rajinikanth too have popular biographies on them. Today, we find a lot of technocrats, management professionals, especially from abroad, making bestsellers in India. Many authors like Chetan Bhagat, Sobha De, Anita Desai have Facebook fan pages, and the writers are also active in Twitter and blog. This helps to know more about the wants of the audience and helps in direct interaction. These writers employ a variety of experimental narrative techniques to present a wide range of subject matter. Digital or cyber literature is the latest trend in which works of creation are exclusively and for digital devices. In this trend of literature, the writer relies on cyber medium like website, blogs, or social media pages. The last decades have witnessed the rise of works depicting a contemporary Indian society, written perhaps with an Indian readership in view, but acclaimed by an increasingly international audience. To sum up, I can say it is observed that Indian English literature is full of quantity, variety, antiquity, philosophy, and quality, but still it is regarded at nascent offspring stage. After the independence, it is emerging as one of the most promising and prolific literatures of the world. Indian writing in English is full of quantity and potential and turns out to be a new form of Indian culture and voice which covers wide range of poets, dramatists, novelists, essayists who are making their significant contribution to the world literature. So I thank you all. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Bachchan. Now, I want to deliver my vote of thanks for everybody present here, especially our Pro VC ma'am, who has come here and she has given so much of her time to this e-conference, and all my faculty members and the faculty members of other departments, our students who have behaved so well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Everyone present online and offline. Our technical session will begin in few minutes. So while we are arranging things, if you want a break, you can take a break for 10 minutes. That would be tea break. Thank you, everyone, online and offline. This is tea break time. Our technical session will start from 12:10 p.m. Thank you.
यूट्यूब लाइव चल रहा है भैया। हम कर दे रहे हैं, रुकिए ना।
10 minutes के लिए stop। Pause कर दो। Ma'am, while things are being arranged, I have given them free break for 10 minutes. Okay.
Now you take over.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for not touching this. Good Now I'm going to sit down. अब कुछ नहीं, अब इनागुरल सेक्शन होगा।
इनको लाना है स्क्रीन पर आते से, ठीक है।
वॉशरूम नहीं है यहाँ। मेरा कहाँ लोगे?
अब देखिए जब लक्ष्य करके देखिए, ये मेरा चार्जर है।
ये हमारा चार्जर है, लगाए थे।
Please keep quiet. You are in a conference hall. If you want a tea break, 4 more minutes are left. You can go and enjoy in this cold morning. We will start at 12:10. Our resource person has already joined us. It's like coffee.
आगे इधर बैठाइए, इधर बैठाइए। हेलो सर, इनको मेरे बच्चे लोग आगे बैठे, लेकिन स्क्रीन पर ऐसा जाएगा।
Since you are on screen now, so it would be better if you come forward because seats in the forward are empty. It appears you are sitting in a classroom.
Come forward.
Today you are not in your classroom, you are in a conference. Please come forward.
Can I?
Yeah.
कुछ चलाइए ना इसका मैच कहाँ
Dear participants, now we are ready to begin our technical sessions. Both of you who are present here physically and those who are watching us either through YouTube Live or who have joined us through Google Meet. I request all of you to keep quiet, keep your mics and mouths shut, because our invited speakers have joined us now, and it is a very fortunate moment for us because today we are going to listen to a personality who has carved a niche for himself both in academics and as a creative writer. He is a renowned professor. He is a great creative writer, much acclaimed creative writer. He is none other than Professor R.P. Singh, the Professor of English at the Department of English and Modern European Languages at the University of Lucknow. Sir is a Director of International Collaboration, International Students, and the Vice Chairman of Delegation University of Lucknow. He has published more than 150 research articles and book chapters, and is credited with several books published from different publishers of national and international repute. He has been a fellow on 400 foreign assignments, to be briefly put up as those at the Department of Gender Studies, Central European University Budapest, University of Rome, France, and a writer in residence, Uzbekistan. He has been the member of Board of Studies, RDC, of approximately 10 universities and institutions across India, and the Chairman, Course Committee of English for CBSE New Delhi. Professor Singh has also worked as NAAC peer team member and consultant to several foreign publication houses. He is associated in various capacities and honors with dozens of prestigious journals, like academic editor of the Vichum Review, supported by New Jersey College English Association. He has prepared several modules for distance learning programs. He has guided 19 PhDs and 39 MPhil scholars and completed 5 research projects funded from prestigious institutions like UGC, ICSR, ICPR, ICCR, etc. Apart from that, as a creative writer in English and Hindi, his play Priya Market and other plays that was published in 2014, Ecologue, When Branko Flies, Shakespeare की 7 रातें, and अंतर्द्वंद 14 फरवरी, चैन कहाँ अब नैन हमारे have received critical acclaim and wide popularity. Banjaran, The Muse, Cloud, Moon, and a Little Girl, Pathik and Pravah, and Neeli Aankhon Wali Ladki, Adventures of Honey and Banna, The World of Maybe, Two Violet Flowers represent his poetry. So today we are fortunate enough to have with us a personality whose CV is inimitable. It can be a source of envy for anyone who is associated with academics to have a CV like Professor R.P. Singh. As a professor, he is much popular among his students, not only in India but abroad. As a research scholar, as a researcher, his papers have been published in journals where everyone wants one of his papers to get published. As a creative writer, he has published his works in English and Hindi, both fiction and poetry. So, you and me are fortunate because Professor Singh is with us, and we will listen him on the topic Modern Indian English Literature, Texts and Research. So, I welcome you, sir.
over. And the extent time we have Vice Chancellor taking the lead. And the Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor K. Bachchan sir, the head department of the who is the chairperson of the study area. Has been the original to give the study.
यूएसबी से डायरेक्ट नहीं कनेक्ट होगा।
यूएसबी यहाँ सेटअप नहीं है। वो बंद करिए। बंद करिए ना भैया, आप सब बंद करिए ना
It is very happy feeling today to be here with Professor Prashant and Professor Mukerji, my fellow colleagues, students, the scholars, and the teachers, principals, and other esteemed faculty members joining this event from different colleges, institutions. So, I have shared with you that I will be talking about modern English literature, text and research. So, I was listening to the speakers and the introduction of the seminar that has traced the context, the major trends and the development of English study, English literature in India. Professor K. Bachchan sir, he has traced the development, origin and development of English literature, and before him, it was very happy to see that our Pro Vice Chancellor, he has also traced the major emphasis of studies, that is the forte of the seminar today. When I discuss my point of view, when I present my point of view, so I will think about modernism. And the word modernism to me, apart from any chronological tracing of the text written by the Indian authors, it may be seen to be the emergence of restraint to be put for the storage of Indian identity and Indianness. When I read Indian literature in English, for my own purpose, it is not canonical description, it may not be canonical description, it may not be having any canonical acceptance, but I understand that when we divide the whole, when we trace the whole journey of Indian writing in English, we can divide this in 4 different phases. The first phase that I find suitable to discuss is the phase from 1793, very long, 1793. This is the phase when you see Sheikh Deen Muhammad has written the travels of Deen Muhammad, although this was a kind of loosely in his travelogue. So from that time, when English writing started from the Indian subcontinent to 1930, I find this date very significant because from here, from this stage, you see that English was associated with the national movement and with the provided for me is from 1930 to 1980. And this long duration of 50 years, even this can be divided in two categories. The first category, beginning from 1930 and spanning up to 1960, and I find that social condition is of major concern. 1960 to 1980. 1980 is a very significant date when we all, many critics say that this is the advent of Rushdie in the scenario of Indian writing, and many times we call it before Rushdie and after Rushdie. So I'm not going into that debate. For a later understanding, for a common understanding of the development of the journey of English studies in India, this is the time from 1950 to 1980. Here, mostly we are focusing on culture. The second phase of the development of English studies, 1930 to 1980, and this I divide in two categories, two phases. The first spanning from 1930 to 1960, and the second from 1960 to 1980. The first is social, that is having a social impetus, and the second one is having an impetus on culture. That is, you can say, the cultural negotiation. The first is social negotiation. And after that, when I scan the development of study in India, I find the phase after 1980 to the contemporary time, today, even yesterday, today, every time, the moment you write joke on WhatsApp, maybe it is also a text of culture and literature. The other day, it becomes text in literature, because literature is now giving way to cultural studies, and many other debates are there. That is a matter of discussion, maybe we discuss at later stage. So it is that the last phase that for the 1980 to 1949, even then we divided into categories. First is the 1980 to 2010. I'm not about to you. Yes, sir. Okay. So I was talking about the last phase that I consider in my researches from 1980 to current time, and in this we can say 1980 to 2010. This is another you can see different dimensions. And after 2010, if we talk about the interesting word from Gopal and discussion of different generations. This is the we can say young alpha in 2010 with iPhone that is introduced, and the new generation is coming up, and that is the technology is meddling with technology is approaching the canons of literature, culture, and what everywhere. So this is one division of one understanding of Indian writing in English that is called IEL that I find for myself. This is my division. It may not be canonized, it may not be accepted, but I have my own meaning of modernism is not chronological. The first thing that I want to share with you. Studies of thought. Then we started creating one identity. When we started some rational thoughts, some scientific intervention, that is what I feel as modern phenomena. And this context, you can say, it should be taken to understand the modern Indian literature, or for that purpose of any nation where literature is being written and the literature is having an association with the tradition. That tradition in English is that of what you can say, the meta tradition of English studies. So, for that purpose, the studies in Indian writing in English, when we do researches, when we talk about, when we consider our text, context, etc. So, we find when we study these traditions, these trends, so we find that our Indian literature in English, that is talked about the exuberant local culture. We are very much discussing, if we trace, explore the context of our literary canon, we find exuberant local culture. We find, you can say, diversity of dialogues among regions and culture. We also find the changing mindset and changing dimensions of colonial import. Just start with Raja Rao, with Big Rao, when we talk about Raja Rao, we talk about Raja, and these writers. And further, we move ahead to consider the plethora of thoughts that invite an analysis of the class consciousness, struggle for the survival of life. This is a trend that we find almost running across these timelines that I have discussed, and then we can say that governing local agencies, the administrative level, these are also present in the text of different ways, different times. So, in this context, when we talk about the propagation of ideas, propagation of those ideas that are rooted in and from Indian religion and mythological instances. They are varied in terms, they are varied in understanding and readings from the text available in Indian language. Also, there is strength of aesthetics. I can't say the trend, but you can feel that the aesthetics from the literary production and its byproduct in various languages in India. It may also be observed to be translated as the part of modern Indian literature. Because the moment we call modern Indian literature, so we have to consider the originality of the thought and the originality of the style. We have two different things. But also we have to see the long tradition, out of that long tradition of literature in a culture, in a country, how the individual talent as a text is emerging. This phenomena we can also find, we can also see to be blossoming, to be flourishing in the text. One more point that I would like to note, I would like to share with you that is always visible is that in the flow of Indian literature in English is the national consciousness. And this national consciousness can be described in different terms, in different pages. The moment we were writing the first page that I shared with you, the second page that I shared with you, sometimes this nation is, this nationalism is the concept of the collective consciousness of country, freedom, thirst for freedom. Sometimes this is the negotiation of the social realities. sometimes the cultural negotiations, and sometimes also diasporic identities, diasporic crafting and other issues related to that. And also in the 21st century, the first decade, the second decade, the contemporary time, different other connotations, reverberations are around in literary studies and in literary production. So you can see that in literary tradition, this literary tradition, this go away back to the 1000 of years. And from there we find that from that meta text we find something and then we try to associate that with the current literary products. This thing is very much visible in many texts around. When we move further, when we think around for the tropes, for the tendencies of Indian writing in English, we find that this is constructing the theme. The Indian writing in English is constructing the themes that holds criticism of life in Indian social and political media. Negotiations, you can say, negotiations between India's traditional setup, cultures, narratives, with the West in the modern sense of the word, on the one hand, and on the other hand, the negotiation, the realities with the current situation, the current issues. Excuse me, just a minute. आप राजेंद्र से बात करते हैं, sorry. So this is sorry, it was an urgent call from my university, so I take that. This is again when we discuss the pattern of Indian writing English, we have to go for the complex structure of our society, the complex structure of our thought also, and the greater workman, the greater knowledge tradition, aesthetic tradition, language tradition, cultural tradition that India has, and how do we negotiate with that. This is also to be taken, and this is also to be considered while judging the text of Indian writing English. And you see, this gives us the potent. It is an encounter with not only colonial mindset, also that of neo-colonial pattern. When you can say in the global village, what is our identity? In the global village, how do we associate with our culture? How do we negotiate with our culture? And how do we create our own reading? Because the moment we look at a text, how we counter and how we explain that is the. So, you can say the characteristic features, therefore, of Indian writing in English. They talk about indigenous roots. They talk about individual and collective progress. And also, they are the song of nationalism. They are the song of an equation. This equation with the native and with the people abroad. And further, when we look in this area, when we consider the text and the researches in this context, we find with the rise and reception of new education, the text may be observed with the readings towards the celebration of Indian value system. You may disagree with this word. In the post-modern scenario, we have a right for this negotiation. So, how do we negotiate our value system? Because ultimately, the literature has to associate with the culture. No literature is borrowed from some other planet. It is the record of our struggle, it is the record of our understanding and our negotiation of the way of life we lead. So, the images, the character types, the sense and sensibilities, the economic, the political, the social scenario, and the ideals of social justice, you can say somewhere current speakers have talked about tribal literature, they have talked about Dalit writing. So these patterns, also the pattern of inspiration, the patterns of activism, the concept of freedom, different kind of freedom, different levels of freedom, reception of freedom, interpretation of freedom, these things. And you can say the pattern of the justices, I'll use the word plural here, and economic, social, and many other issues, women's spaces, and these, we can say we have to negotiate our literature, our literary context is negotiating the women's spaces, they are negotiating the spaces for other gender construct. So this is what the thematic and the other patterns are visible in the text of Indian writing. We find humanist tradition, reach of quality, you can say economic independence, we can say reimagine. Now, we will see in the contemporary scenario, we are very much looking at the reimagined temperament for progress and achievement. Why this reimagination is there? This defines the literature that is written, like what I said, that in a generation in the modern phase after in 21st century. So how we are reimagining? We are reimagining the things in the constant of postmodern and post-postmodern debates when we don't have any say for the grand tradition to one thing. We are talking about the individual histories, we are talking about the local histories, we are talking about the negotiation of the personal self, negotiation of ourself with the moment we talk about the cross-cultural management, we talk about a different issues of communication with the culture. So individual is, the moment individual self is to study, it is surrounded by different patterns. The religious culture, the social culture, the professional culture, the national culture, these are the patterns. So how does that affect, how these paradigms are affecting the making of a consciousness for creation? This is to be understood. So by now I will talk about the dialogues, the writings, and I will take you to the road of select text that you can say for the enterprise analysis. The moment we go for doing some research work, the moment we go for research work in the cultural context of a text, in the literary context of a text, in that text itself, so as a student activity studies, we can begin research with the text during the establishment of writing. Establishment when we see the establishment of our writing and the establishment of the university. This is the point, the first point that I find that research work should be focused on this also. Establishment of university in India. It is 1857, the president and three presidencies, university was established Bombay, Kolkata, and Madras at the time. So why? You can ask the question, why? Because when there are universities, there is research. Because the goal and purpose of education is also research. And this may also focus on the making of literature, the idea behind canonization of literature. Because there is also politics. What is literature? Who is a writer? Whose literature is better than what? Many things are there. We can find many of us, we don't accept that logic, but this is the trend. I'll touch upon that topic also a little more. So, what I find that with the establishment of the universities in India, university in the modern sense. I'm not talking about Nalanda, Kusala, the greater seat of learning culture, but the university that we are now working, that we are living here. So with this, and this gives you access to the world outside and the making of the text around. With the realization of education, we can say, when we, with the realization of education, that self-content, the bad, the poor, the voices that inspire for the good, for the richness of thought, and the worthiness of the growth of society. We can say literature of thought, what lies with this date. And we can also see, we can also find a significant topic in this context, the literature in the syllabus and the literature in the advanced. Because you can see the literary history and the history that may be unearthed, that may be taken care. So there is a need of reimagining India's history, especially literary history. And there is also, we should advocate for worthy researches that shall inspire to understand the need for change in Indian cultural meaning. Why is reimagining? Because literature associates with, we can say, the prevailing politics in the institutions. This is a significant point to think about. Which literature is recognized and what type of literature, what features of literature are. So we can see that Bengal Renaissance, we have seen Bengal Renaissance and many texts related from that context. They lead to the making of Indian writing, they lead to the making of Indian literature around. And this is what we can understand, this is what we can find out, this we can.
यहाँ नहीं सुनाई पड़ रहा है, वहाँ जाता है।
सर डिस्कनेक्टेड हो रहा है।
वहीं से प्रॉब्लम
वो वहीं से लेकिन here I don't think anybody should switch on their mobile over here. That will be the reason of all the commotion.
And it was really disconnected. Sorry for it. So now I'm audible again.
Okay.
Please wait. Mr. Chandrakumar Kumar, I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
It was disconnected. There was some technical problem.
Just for a few seconds.
Yes, sir. You are connected now. You are audible.
Thank you so much. So due to some technical issue, it was disconnected. So I was talking about major trends, major scenarios that are visible in Indian English. For the sake of research, what feelings, what ideas come to my mind, and what issues I find significant to share with you institutionalized, globalized authors. These issues, they often reverberate my mind, and we should do research work in this field. Is Indian writing English represented by institutionalized writing, institutionalized text, a globalized author? And the second thing, the problem and issue of canon formation. Who creates canon? Who ratifies canon? The role of publication houses, the location of authors. Suppose any text is written by any university professor, or any text is written by a person living in a village, a small village, having no access to any center or park, any. Is any text published by any so-called branded publication? Or is that text published in the local village panchayat? This issue is also taken care. The role of publisher, the location of this, these are also the debates, the research that we should discuss, we should consider with reference to Indian writing in English. What are the distinctive thematic formal structures, aesthetic emphasis that can be arguably attached with Indian writing in English? What do we consider that this is the so-called aesthetic perspective, the so-called thematic perspective, this is the so-called structural perspective, and do we buy the idea, do we acquire the idea, do we differ with the idea? And one more question, that is, how are Indian books in English for Indian market? How are Indian books in English created for Indian market? They are selected, they are packaged, and so on. Again, this is the issue of canonization of it. And who decides this? Who decides this? Is the literature created in the university department applications by the professors? And is that disseminated among the research scholars and the scholars around? Is the literature created in the corporate houses? The association of Indian literature with power. Power may be political, power may be economic, power may be academic. So, we can say that the perspective of ideology, publicity, power, reception, these debates can make the sector debate in the researches. And here comes cultural studies. When we negate the division of culture, maybe academic, maybe type of culture between high and low, when we talk about anything, the production, any product, the association of the product with power, association of any production, cultural production, literary production with the hegemonic structure. So one more thing that is to be noted, that is to be taken care of, is that valorization of writers' immigrant experience is given advantage. Is that I'm simply putting the questions. I'm just sharing out what I thought. I think the lines. So the advantage of immigration experience of immigration, and there is the planned location of literature into certain theories. Also, the issues of globalization we can study. We can talk about the issues of, like, there's a word, post-colonial exotic by Graham again, post-colonial I have seen that which book normally we consider as suppose we talk about the anthology of Indian writing in English. So this book that is 10-20 Secret Indian Poets by R. Parthasarathy, published quite long back. Any book that is published by any Euro-Centric publication house or any other thing, this may also be a matter of debate issue. Different other debates may also, they are also visible in our scenario of Indian writing English. They may be, just to say quickly, the insider versus outsider debate, the superiority versus inferiority debate. Means, if we are in India, why should we write English? Insider, outsider debate, we can say. Some people, they raise a question that, oh, you are born in Bengal, you are born in Uttar Pradesh, you are born in this. So why would you write in a mother tongue? The debate that we call superficial and authentic, the imitative and creative debate, the shallow and deep pattern of debate, critical, uncritical debate. So we can say protective, deceptive debate pattern. So and also book as thought or book as commodity. This is very because if you look at the scenario around, you will find if you talk to the educated, you will talk to educated people in literature, you will find that 1 out of 10 they can claim themselves poets. So production of books is the production of books is the creation of the book as text as commodity or text as form. So we can also see here that literature that is produced and literature that is created. So literature that is evolved. The moment we see when literature is evolved, so this is a true account of the negotiation of the self and the environment. And this is the pattern. If we in such kind of literature, we have literature that is talking about the struggle. It may be any pattern. It may talk about any pattern of struggle. Not the colonization is not a political issue. Colonization is not an economic issue. It's not only cultural issue. In family, we have different patterns of colonization. We can even say that we have emotional colonization. When the elder brother is ruling the family and younger brother is not saying anything to elder brother, we can say some emotional pattern may also be observed. So these patterns, and when we say literature that is produced, so is there any issue? Is there question? Is there is something governed by the institutional politics issues? So in this context, we should look at literature, we should look at that text, we should look at the context of those texts and the connotations that are coming out of that. To the students that I can see, the scholars, the writers, I will suggest, this suggestion is not for the professors, but this is for my student, you. I always find an acronym for myself. This is called freedom. 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 F stands for feeling. R stands for rewriting. E stands for essence. Again, E stands for energy. And D stands for domestic. O stands for who and M for mind. So, I suggest for you feeling and rewriting the essence and energy of domestic hope and mind. Feeling and rewriting of the essence and energy of domestic hope and mind. So, with this pattern, whenever we are writing, this writing is critical, criticism, this writing is creative. So, we have to think about the domestic hope, the domestic mind. And here, domestic stands for not only the something that is a business context that I do, but it is something out of renegotiating the feedback and the critical acumen in the Indian batting industry. Thank you so much for giving me a chance to talk about my viewpoint, and this is all what I want to share in this podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, thanks a lot.
आप लॉगिन कर लिए वहाँ क्या? अब बोलिए ना, नहीं आएगा।
Sir, thanks for your intellectual response. Due to some lag, there is echo. Am I audible, sir?
बोलिए।
Now the device is open for the participants. If any of you have any questions, you can ask, sir.
माइक दीजिए ना, माइक पर बोलो।
If any one of you want to ask any question, we can provide you mic and you can ask it.
For rewriting, E for talent, E for energy, D for domestic, and O for Uber. Uber. And the M for mind. M for mind.
That is mind.
Might. Okay, sir.
Thank you very much. You start writing, you listen to your heart. When you go far in that, you listen to your heart, irrespective of the pressure from, maybe you want to negotiate that pressure with your supervisor, and that's differently, but that is my nature. That's all.
Thank you very much, sir. It's really inspiring.
Thank you, sir.
और कुछ पूछ।
You want to ask
Anyone else?
आप बोलिए ना, आवाज जाएगा।
Sir, you have used the term Polynesia issue. Can you explain it once again?
Please come here.
आइयो।
बोलिए, वहीं से बोलिए, यहीं बोलिए ना, आप जाएगा। बोलिए, बैठ कर बोलिए आप।
Sir, you have used a term Polynesia issue. Can you once again explain this term?
Those are employees here.
Sir, one of our participants want to ask a question.
माइक दीजिए।
She said that you have used the term Polynesia issue. Please throw light on that, sir.
Polynesia issue, you have used this term. Can you explain it or throw light on it?
Mr. Convener, it is better you take the question from the learned audience and share that with me in the chat box. Because there is something between the leaf and the flower.
आप वहाँ स्विच ऑफ करिए।
सब स्विच ऑफ है सर।
ये वो बात नहीं है, इसी के लिए तो
मैडम बार बार वो भी लॉगिन कर रहे, ये भी लॉगिन कर, तो वो भी इको होगा ना, तो एक सिस्टम से कंट्रोल करने दीजिए। आपको सिर्फ बोलना है या ऑडियो कैच करेगा सर?
Sir, one of our participants had
रुक
a
जाइए।
question. जाइए वहाँ माइक के सामने रखो।
बोलिए, बैठ के बोलिए आप।
Sir, you have used a term Polynesia issue. Can you once again explain this term? What does it mean?
Polynesia issue.
Polynesia,
Miscommunication.
Polynesia, I'm not used Polynesia.
Polynesian.
Madam, I'm not used Polynesia.
P-O-N-I-L-Y-N-E-S-I-A.
Do you want my comment on heteroglasia and cardiolus pattern? Although I'm not sure that we can have the celebration of culture, the cultural pastiche, to mean that with the term Polynesian, because Polynesian not in the mind of now I have borrowed from the other critic. Maybe you are referring to the term heteroglasia, and you are referring to the term heteroglasia, cardiolus. The pastiche, the celebration of different cultures, different traditions in the metatext and the narration. Over to you, Ms. Gopali Biswas. Over to you, please.
कुछ लिखे हैं
I hope the connection is lost. Any other question, please, if you have any?
Sir, this is Miraj here.
Yes.
Yeah. Sir, what I've noticed recently that the Sloven, the writers in the English literature, they are very diverse. If we compare it to that of art, we're mostly concentrated and concentrated on difficult storytelling. Company role to play to promote certain aspects and not especially after the author and which to that in the English of writing today.
Of course, I have also referred to this issue. You will see, I can easily see my learned colleague, Professor Vinod Mishra, sitting over here, and you will listen, you will request him to recite some of the poems. One of the very significant, he's a poet. But how many of us are using the poems of Professor Vinod Mishra and Professor Pashupati Jha? When we have to, we may have some researches, we have many papers, but when we prescribe the book, we go by this book. So the thing is that there is debate. There is a scope of research. Who is the poet? Who is the poet? Who creates poetry? Who canonizes poetry? Different issues are there. I can talk about publication houses and the contemporary. You have asked two questions. You have asked the question that in the contemporary scenario, a lot of issues are being taken, a lot of perspectives are being taken. Yeah, of course, because we have crossed what we call Gen G. Now we are going to Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha, that is when we are operating, we are talking, we are discussing the scenario with internet, with the global village, the concept of global village. So, of course, the issues are varied. When I was talking to you, I got the phone call. There was some important assignment from the university. Because we are not focusing at one point of time. We are not focusing only on that issue. We are branch and many other things like that. So this is what you can easily see that literature is not one. You can't say that this is literature. You can see the making of literature as a process, literature as an outcome. Many things are there. You must have seen the literature, little magazines. What is different thing, but now we see a lot of literature is produced in social media. These concepts. Rashi, I think I have answered your query. publication houses, they do play a role because when we, this is a kind of branding, the brand. You are not going to buy a shirt if you have the money in your pocket. You are not going to buy a, you are not going to your street tailor to stitch a shirt. You are going for the brand. And you are trying to plant the brand, the tagline that is the brand, the name of the brand. That is important. The fabric is not important. The brand is important. So that is also see the difference in electric mass and electric world. The commodifying components. Translation, what reason, what
Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
कर रहा हूँ संगीत किया
Any more questions from the audience? If anyone of you wants to ask any more questions, please come forward and ask that.
यहाँ से बोल दीजिए।
कहाँ से बोल?
यहीं पे बैठ कर हम सामने बैठे ना सर, मैं ड्रॉप कर देना।
इनवाइट करो।
बोलिए सर।
Yes. May I invite Professor Vinod Mishra, who is Professor of English, IIT Roorkee. Please deliver your address. Dr. Vinod Mishra. Dr. Vinod Mishra, am I audible to you?
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, continue.
Okay. So first of all, let me offer my thanks to the university from where I belong to. At the initial level, I'm really thankful to the Vice Chancellor of Ellen Mithila University, Pro Vice Chancellor of the university, the respected Dean, Humanities, the PG Head, Professor A.K. Bachchan, the former Head, Professor Arunima Sinha,
Thank you.
Professor Punita Jha ma'am, Indira ma'am, and all the distinguished professors of the department and the students of this university. It's of course my privilege to be here, and let me on this platform welcome you to IIT Roorkee. My dear friends, when I got the invitation and when I looked at the theme of this webinar, I was really between the devil and the sea as to what would I speak on. But then, despite our busy schedules, I decided I should be briefly touching upon the areas that our students nowadays are taking up as research areas. Because IITs, the world over, are known for research. And since the topic has got the word trends, emerging, modern, and Indian English literature, that actually makes me bubble. And these bubbles were doubled when our friend Professor R.P. Singh gave a very illuminating lecture this morning. I do hope that another friend of ours, Professor Julius Soja, who is also waiting for his turn, and these people are teaching literature in the universities, looking into details as to where are these trends going on. We are actually watching it from the bank, from the coast, from the research scholars that we are conducting. Because when the research scholars come to us, we tell them, bring an author, bring a topic, and then I'll tell you what to find out and what really actually captivates you at the moment. So what I have titled my talk, because when I'm talking to the literary legions, I have to be very careful. And that is why I must take hours and hours to write my talk and then deliver. Because here, it's not a case of giving a presentation, which I'm very much used to, talking to at times 500, 600,000 people. So I have titled my talk as Rituals of Fertility, Re-invoking Traditions in Indian English. Professor Singh has rightly mentioned in his talk how day by day our lifestyles are changing. And the way styles are changing, literature also is changing. And what are the literates doing? The literates are recording those in the form of their writings. So I decided I rather take not only a historical, but then not a theoretical, but then a sort of thematic analysis of certain things that are coming in the form of literature. So, if I'm audible enough, let me be allowed to present my talk. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are audible.
Am I audible? Oh, fine. Yes, that's wonderful. So, as everyone would say and have been saying, that literature mirrors society is actually a universally acknowledged fact. As literature represents the society we live in, it also records the vibes that mankind feels and wants to share with it. If literature records our emotions and feelings, it also cannot remain mute to the changes taking place in society, the way we react, the way we respond, right, and endeavor to assimilate ourselves with the emerging trends appearing from time to time. There are some scholars who have raised the question as to where, when we are talking about the global literature, where our English literary lovers and creative writers, where are they, what are they harping on? Though, as Indians talking about Indian literature, we have, of course, been branded as imitators of the West. But this statement seems to fade fast, as we have at times left our colonial masters far behind in many fields, be it academic, be it sports, be it the world of entertainment, and of course, of scriptures. Indian English literature has undoubtedly grown both in variety and volume, despite several onslaughts and whirlwinds, not only locally, but globally. All the genres of literature, whether of poetry, plays, fiction, or prose, India has made its mark from time to time, as Dr. Bhanshan rightly lectured. The journey which was started by Tagore in 1913 as the first Indian to be Nobel laureate in literature continues unabated even today. B.S. Naipaul, Salman Rushdie, Arundhati Roy, Kiran Desai, Aravind Adiga, and Jhumpa Lahiri are some such names who have made not only India proud, but also the world proud. In addition, there are many diasporic writers and poets who have attracted worldwide attention. Since the theme of the webinar has been kept open and vast because of the numerous modern trends emerging from time to time, it won't be fair to concentrate either on a single genre or creative writer. We must all admit that in order to understand the emerging trends in Indian English literature, a look at the researches being made in premier institutions can prove to be an eye-opener. They should not only substantiate the theme of the webinar, but also provide serious scholars with a chance to explore further and sensitize them towards carrying out their researches in Indian English literature. While this motive can help everyone estimate and understand if Indian English literature copes up with the emerging trends, or are we still following the trodden path? In an age when everything is getting digital, continuing our literary sojourn on quest on repetitive path is bound to land us into difficulties. The need today is to incubate, to innovate, and accommodate ourselves with the changing realities, be it in terms of forms, experiments, themes, contents, in order to keep pace with the changing reality. It would be apt to touch upon the word modern in the context of today's discussion, as you have already mentioned, modern trends, and that too in Indian literature and English. While the term modern has a chronological and historical background, but no one can deny the fact that we have come a long way from the literary modernism. Yet the connotative interpretation of the word always remains relevant in all ages. To substantiate my point, let me remind the audience of how the depiction of theme and portrayal of characters in R.K. Narayan's The Guide was modern in those days. Would the reader of present day generation believe that this is modern now? I think for any age, a character, a condition and a theme may appear to be modern, provided is often unusual, unacceptable and unapproved of practices. Hence the word modern, modernity and modernism all continue to surface in every ages. It is time here that we must remember that to modern, another adjective has been used, postmodern. We are having postmodernism, posthumanism, post-structuralism, I mean many things. But then modernism continues. If life and literature are synonymous with each other, then the events taking place in human lives record the trends through different mediums. Creative writers, we are fortunate, we have Professor R.P. Singh with us. Creative writers grasp the undercurrents of the age and reproduce them in the form of emotions and feelings, lending them literary flavor, which the readers often find at everybody's personal joy, cry, anguish, or accomplishment. As Indian English literature has got its distinctiveness because of its Indian ethos, the time has come not only to analyze whether we are continuing with the tradition of imitation or we have moved forward. There are certain questions to be mulled over. If Indian English literature is still stuck to the trends of the West or has been able to create its own niche by rejecting the hangovers of the past. It is difficult retaining our distinct identity. It is difficult though to say anything conclusively, yet there is no harm in realizing the global challenges and retaining our distinct identity by reassessing our myths, our scriptures that have always attracted the attention of the West towards us. This can be realized only when our creative writers look to our indigenous heroes, rightly mentioned by Professor R.P. Singh also, for inspiration and not for any alien role models. If Indian English literature genuinely feels proud of Toru Dutt, Aurobindo Ghosh, Rabindranath Tagore for their loyalty to and consciousness of disseminating Indian myths, cultures and tradition even during independence, the post-independent Indian poets and writers, though they met certain disjunctions, as I have mentioned in one of my books, in independent India, but for the same reason of alienating and influence of cerebral celebration. This you might have found if you might have taken a cursory glance at the way Indian English poetry in the post-independent scenario was being written. Today one can witness that quite a good number of poets and writers, despite responding to the global challenges, are yet not devoid of their nativity myths and songs. While some of these poets have responded to the trends not only by following the experimentation, but also by revisiting our scriptures to recover the lost tradition. I am very particular about some certain things which I actually want that our scholars who are going to take up research projects or going to take up PhDs, they will rather cater to that. I am reminded of some contemporary Indian English poets, namely late Niranjan Mohanty, Charushil Singh, T. Vasudeva Reddy and R.K. Singh, whose poetic numbers bear close resemblances to our native masters. I cannot resist myself from quoting a few lines from their poetic corpus to reflect how they, despite facing an internal exile, continue to recreate Indian ethos and preserve Indianness. Professor R.P. Singh in his lecture rightly mentioned about the works being published and a wonderful book on his entitled Festivals of Fire. Now read Niranjan Mohan, such a person between the idol and the common human beings. And one of his books which became very popular entitled God and the devotee. And it is true that nothing possesses me so badly so deeply, so neatly, as does the rotundity of your eyes, O Lord. Let us mutually agree to exchange our positions. And then he says, you come down to earth, and I fly to your throne, bearing all mirth. Let us sort out our follies and differences, so that you being the wise become a fool, and I being an idiot become a wisdom fool. Yet, in another poem entitled Krishna, he says, now see how he depicts the relationship between Krishna and Radha. And he says, even if I were not born as Krishna and you as Radha, I would have remained yours faithfully. Do names matter? Can you tell me the name of the bird that sniffs and sings in the cage of your body? Where do the names go? Where do the words go when body becomes a mere shadow? Perhaps, so long as you treat me as divine, abstract, distant, itchy, I cannot get answers to all my questions. I cannot solve the riddle, the mystery of all my problems as long as I am not born in human form on earth. Now, are we not reminded of Aurobindo? Are we not reminded of some ancient Indian poets? And we are saying that where has Indian literature come to? We actually have to find that balance in order to see that the balance is met. But then, times are changing my life. Keeping the question of genre apart, I would like to touch upon, I am of course, unfortunately a poet, and my heart most of the time goes to poetry. But then here I will keep myself away from poetry and will touch upon certain areas where I do feel tempted and I do advocate upcoming researchers in these areas more than allow literary lovers turning and turning in the widening jar where the fathom cannot hear the fathomer. But to my view, the sapient coming seems to me at hand, subject to the revelations of our indigenous artifact made to the outside world more than it was done by Charles Wilkins, who had made the first English translation of the Bhagavad Gita in 1785. Likewise, H.H. Wilson also deserves credit for inaugurating the translation of Puranas by endeavoring to translate the Vishnu Puranas in English in 1855. But after that, perhaps the scenario came to a halt. And nowadays, what is the emerging trend? Emerging trend is translating. The emerging trend is translation studies, because we all believe that if you really want to bring the regional literatures to the limelight or to the mainstream, if you really want to bridge the gap between the mainstream and the substream, you have to bring translation studies to the fore. And here, I would like to request the majority of the research scholars joining this e-conference to focus on these areas where they can not only understand literature, where they can not only understand how the life of an untouchable still goes on when we look at the biographies, autobiographies by Bama or by Lady Kamble or by somebody else, because there the lights should go to the hidden paths which have not been brought to light. Of course, there are challenges. There are challenges to the translator, but the translator matters because as you being a researcher, you can see how whatever the translation has been done, there is a scope for you to transcreate. But while you are going to translate, you actually need a lot of knowledge. You actually need a sort of exposure to the other language as well, not confined only to one language. So when we talk about translation, my friend, all we need to say is that what a translator conveys. Now, many of you may not agree with me that translation can be a part of the research, but I say, my dear friend, from my own experience, that it is not only the theme that should inspire you, but rather the language also, because you are a language teacher apart from being a literature teacher. Translators should convey the message of the context of the source language, which is actually missing when, the verbal translations are being done. Mainstream critics and intellectuals often find Dalit literature lacking in aesthetical value, because most of these literatures are from the Dalit area. But unless and until they are translated, we cannot understand the Dalit aesthetics. Saran Kumar Limbale, all of you, Saran Kumar Limbale, all of you are acquainted with. So in his book, Aesthetics of Dalit Literature, responded defeatingly when he said, if pleasure is the basis of the aesthetics of Marathi Savar literature, pain or suffering is the basis of aesthetics of Dalit literature. Hence, work in the areas of Dalit literature should continue. Many of our readers are reminded of when Mulkraj Anand did his first book entitled Untouchable in 1935. Now the question is, even after years and years, even after 3 or 4 decades, have we really been able to realize the changes that have taken place? Have their lives still changed? I think the question is up to all of us. Limbale later says, they don't want our talk, our struggle and our literature, but we have proved ourselves. Today our tone and word are most visible and part of the case, part of the caste consciousness. So there seems to be some silver lining of late when many universities have included Dalit literature into their syllabi and curricula. But here again, I would actually request the several deans and several officials associated with universities, let us revise our syllabi. Let us actually think of the contemporary literature that is also being written and which has got a lot of substance. Because till now we are still going on with the old mode and we are not able to, because that actually requires some logic. Unless and until our students are enabled to understand what is going on, perhaps we will not be able to accommodate these. So there, of course, it has become possible only because of the translation of Dalit text into different languages. Both the readers as well as writers have come across a world of suffering and sorrows which were kept in abeyance. And translation has not only brought us reputation, rather it has also brought our reputation as in the outside world. We have been recognized. Translation has reconstructed the boundaries of caste, reason, culture, religion, language and demolished various social, political and cultural barriers. Dalit writings in translations from different language, of course they pose certain difficulties, but then what these writers are doing, they are also providing a glossary which can also help us, and in that way we can understand what is the content. The readers, in many cases, suppose if we take work named Karatku by Bama or the Bridges We Broke by Baby Kamle, we come across many such words which are not only difficult but which are intelligible. But then it actually allows us to know what they really want to say. It is not an exaggeration to say that Dalit writings in general and the translation in particular always run the risk of being viewed as a propagandist, where the same or the dark realities of the country are revealed to the world. But, in the words of Sipra Mukherjee, who rightly mentions, this is not unique to Dalit literature. It is history from James Joyce to B.S. Naipaul, to Taslima Nasreen, to Orhan Pamuk. Whenever the author translation has used a language that carries a text beyond borders. But it is especially true of Dalit literature where we are dealing with injustice and inhumanity of one community over another. The next thing or the next topic that I want to briefly touch upon is the inclusion of film studies in the Department of English. I'm really proud to share with you that 2 of my scholars are currently following their research in film studies. And through that, as a supervisor, I am also learning a lot. And the sort of things that happen in a film when the film is the adapted version of a book or something, then you really have all things to say. And my dear friends, why we believe that film studies cannot be a part of literature? I think there are certain reservations. Let us come out of those reservations. Let us think about that film studies, what we teach in the classroom can be worth retaining only when they are shown through visuals and only when we can create a world where not only the students discuss and we become a part, we also learn. The advent of films into literary world happens to be one of the most significant interventions The intervention that was not taken seriously in the beginning is now, of course, being applauded. Syam Benegal, an Indian filmmaker, goes as far as pronouncing cinema as the 10th muse. Today, I think majority of our listeners, majority of our audience members are actually not mute to the fact that a film entitled Sip of the Theseus by Anand Gandhi, how it not only created a lot of noise, but actually made us realize what existence means. And I think if students are exposed to such a sort of cinema studies, I think they will better understand existentialism, they'll better understand the meaning than if we simply tell them to go through the books and realize simply theoretically, because what we teach them theoretically has to be brought to practice. Here I am reminded of one of my old professors, I think my profound regards to Professor Pale, who once upon a time told me, simply reading the wasteland will not make you understand wasteland. Listen to the tape that is available in our university. And my dear friends, I must share with you that at that point of time, there was actually a recording available. And in one of the classes, Professor Pale made us listen to that. And then the sort of enjoyment we derived after listening to the wasteland in a proper elocution, then we realized and then we can understand more the meanings than we can understand simply by reading the text. Now, we are teaching Shakespeare. Okay, let us teach Shakespeare. But why can't we teach them Hamlet through a movie? Fine, because that actually will give us more opportunity, not only of the text, but as the text has been adapted. Why can't we? And there are many films available. All is what is actually needed is the endeavor from our side as supervisors and the endeavor from the student side also, so that they can bring it into their classrooms. Of course, many universities do not have this infrastructure, because I remember when I was teaching a course entitled Diasporic Writings, I brought namesake to my classroom, and it was such a great success, my dear friend, that I really feel elated at times. Now, Shakespeare remains eminent even with 400 years of death, not only because he was capable of replicating life with a single high degree of fidelity. Even Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, the same. Now, Odysseus, a hero of the War of Troy, is sailing towards his homeland Ithaca, and his ships are attacked, and he loses some of his crew members. It happens at a point of time when everyone in the ship was hungry. Homer captures the moment so compatible with human nature that he describes how Odysseus and his fellow men did not weep just after they lost their friends. Now, the deliberation of films in mainstream academic circles, despite reservations, we find our students interested in pursuing research in film studies. They often have to look towards specialized institutes. Why can't we also begin from here? Initially, it will have some troubles, but then we are people who can. If we can understand literature, why can't we understand the interpretation of it? The fundamental logic of the people who refuse to consider the discussion of films as a serious academic endeavor is that the films offer only entertainment. And I think when we talk about entertainment, literature also provides us entertainment. They forget that film is an art form that not only delights but also instructs, as it is capable of showing human problems with a higher resolution and in a reasonably explicit form. This is the reason why films became the most emerging and influencing form of art in the 21st century. One of the main reasons people discourage films as mainstream literature is because it hampers the imaginative power. But I do not agree with it. It actually my imaginative power more than, and I at times have felt more than that is there in the scenario. Films are very often considered, and it happens in the departments of literature quite frequently, as cooked materials. Following the aforementioned logic, the reader of a written text requires a considerable amount of imagination in order to make the text comprehensible. The question that needs to be asked is, do films really rob us of our imagination? Fine. But I think it actually helps us in not only in imagination, but in anticipation also. Our creative vibes are awakened more than when we read a piece of literature. Ingmar Bergman, Swedish filmmaker and director of The Seventh Seal, a very important movie where we can be reminded of their one line where it says, "We are survival machines." And as literary lovers, are we really not? So if it is so, why can't we bring film studies to the Department of Literature? He says, Ingmar Bergman says, no form of art goes beyond ordinary consciousness as film does. Straight to our emotions, deep to our twilight gloom of soul. What Bergman offers as a strength of cinema seems to be the concern of people who deny every aspect of the seriousness of it. Is it not the directness of the films that alienates it from the literary tradition or impedes our imagination? The answer to the question is a direct no. Every visual of any great film refers to some distant and implicit signified leading to a vast requirement of imagination. Thus, the native notion of discouraging the practice of film watching and discussing on the basis of differences in the uses of imaginative faculty should be totally scrapped. Cinema is as creative as any piece of writing. The next concern that needs to be addressed with regard to cinema is following: whether cinema, visual or audio. I do remember that when we have, because in engineering institutes, you teach them not only verbal but non-verbal communication. And sometimes it becomes very dry. Why not bring the Charlie Chaplin movie and tell them how important silence has got a meaning too? When Charlie Chaplin was asked to dress, and what he said, what he did, he dressed in his baggy trousers, big shoes, a derby hat, and a stick. And he actually adapted himself in such a situation that later on he became a persona as he reflected it in many of his movies entitled Modern Times, The City Girl, and many more. So the question is, it totally depends upon us, not only as teachers, as supervisors, how you are going to show them the trend. Because of course we are living in 21st century. We cannot shut our eyes, as rightly said by Professor R.P. Singh. We cannot shut our eyes. Nowadays, creative people, and I came to one event where 3 guys made a film only on their iPhones, and the film is named Tangerine Red Brand. You can watch it. Now that actually depicts the horrific reality of living in a postmodern, post-colonial and in a contemporary world where lifestyles are changing, where Mahesh Dattani can find his team being acted in such a way where unusualness has gone to the margins now. This is actually the trend that is there. And apart from all these, what I need to focus here is that the question as how many of us become familiar with these art pieces as a consequence of reading them. I'm afraid the answer that will be raised in favor will always be a minority. When we talk about the adaptation, how much does the adaptation follow the source text? Again, it depends on the originality of the idea present in the source text. Those who are teaching the guide, and if they show students in the movie the guide, I think students can provide a better interpretation of what is the difference between the visual and the verbal art. And then they can also find the gaps that are there. But of course, there may be certain deviations, as the book namesake, when it was converted into a movie, can be found. But then unless and until we bring it to the classroom, I think perhaps students will not be able to understand how horrific the life of a diasporic person is there in the other countries. Of course, we simply talk about how they became familiar, what are their books and all. The core ideas of the source text survives in the adaptation only because Shakespearean ideas happen to be beyond space and time. And that's why, as the literature teachers and lovers, we also tell them in the same manner. Now, let us here talk about Vishal Bharadwaj. Now see, we today know that it is not only the English reading people who only can contribute to the English literary scenario, but there are many, who are from the newspaper area, who are from the entertainment area, who are from the corporate world, and they are contributing more than us, isn't it? The name of Aravind Adiga is on everybody's mind. And now there are many more names also emerging. Are we really getting acquainted with them? Do our research scholars really feel that the age we are living in and the age being reflected, are they being brought to literary departments? I think the need is to bring that to our department. Now, the native notion,
उन्हीं का नहीं निकला है.
the native notion of discouraging the practice of
देखना
film
पड़ेगा, मास्टर से मिलाएंगे, देखते हैं क्या.
So, now here, I also want to add something. Let us only not watch English movies. There is an impression among many of our students that only by knowing only by watching the English movies we can have a grasp over English or whatsoever. I mean, because we are aware of the fact that through translation we can bring our Indian consciousness to the outside world, through translation of these movies also, because many of these movies have been adapted. And thanks to movie.com, which not only provides you the movies in original, but they also provide you the English translations, and the dialogues are written there. And it will actually go a long way in making us benefited. And that is why here in this connection, I want to make a mention of Tamil movie, a Tamil movie, which is Care of Kanchara Palam. When I was watching the Tamil movie Care of Kanchara Palam, I was actually reminded of one of the Maithili plays, which is Hafait Chahat Jindagi by Sudhanshu Shekhar Chaudhary. Now, the theme in a way is the same, because they talk about it is actually the story of a tea seller, and then there are other friends also. But in a way talk about their own freedom. In a way it talks about their own individuality and all. So now the question is, if we simply confine ourselves to one area, I think perhaps our growth will come to us. So Care of Kanchara Palam, a Telugu language slice of life mythology film, which is and you know, the person who has directed it is only his debut movie. Venkatesh has done it, and there are more than 80 actors. It actually may remind of many of the characters of Shakespeare, where there are quite a number of characters. And the film features a cast of about 80 non-actors, most of them native. It is not that all of them are trained, but you can get a new lease of life with this movie. There are also frequent workshops organized by FTII, which from time to time you can go and attend, provided you are interested in it. And then another area that actually should attract our literary circles, and that is of course attracted in many of the institutions and universities, is disability studies, which is of utmost importance. Now, we all of us know that literature and psychology are interrelated. And now when we allow or when we motivate our students to take up this in their and add their research, I think we are also trying to see how interdisciplinary work can be done. So this significant area of disability studies, all of us are aware of theories not only, but then in practice you can see. And in this, it is not only literature people. There are people from different worlds, as I said. And in many cases, they are bringing their autobiography. They are writing their autobiography. Somebody is a corporate player. Somebody is a health activist. Somebody who has watched the Bhopal gas tragedy, even though he or she was not affected. But then that was stamped on his or her mind, and later on that was converted into a book, and that is really one him or her laurels. I do feel that while we must not break our ties with pure literature, moving or venturing forth into interdisciplinary areas should be encouraged in all universities. If modern literature records the brokenness, split identity, uprootedness, longing, belonging, negotiations of home and all, fine, mental or physical, should also be examined to understand the psychological underpinnings of these people who have in a way been barred, who have in a way been actually been kept apart. Disability studies actually focus on multifarious epistemologies and methodologies. An offshoot of American civil rights movement, here we find people who are writing such novels. They are actually taking a slice out of their life, and they have really become very popular. And many of them are even in their young age, and they are really created a lot of hue and cry. And in the days to come, it will be established. So the question is, when we're talking about the terms, when we're talking about the trends, we should also keep our eyes open to the trends that are actually shaping up in our literature. Because in the days to come, that will become a part of history and we'll all accept. But then here, it is time that we took our interest in these areas and saw to it that researches are being done. For example, yes, let me also talk about the names. Yes. Now, Malini Chip, a breath of fresh air, very important. It is actually a description of how people were affected because of the Bhopal gas tragedy. And later on, when Malini Chip settled abroad, then since it was haunting her mind, she actually developed it in the form of a novel. Right? And then we have another name entitled Preeti Monga, who actually tells her own story in the other senses, an inspiring true story of a visually impaired person. And it is once again her own life. Then we also have Malini Chip's One Little Finger. Amulya Maladi, as I mentioned, Amulya Maladi depicted her novel on the basis of Bhopal gas tragedy, whereas Malini Chip depicted her own story, how she could type with the help of only one finger, and she has titled her own work as One Little Finger. There are two more names who are actually writing in both the languages, like our Professor R.P. Singh, Shivani Gupta and Yasmin Soni. They are also doing the rounds. All these writers, because of their differing backgrounds, they enrich the literary world and make everyone realize that disability is caused either because of some accident or because of some freak of their destiny. Disability studies could not be seen with hatred but with compassion, because we are all literature lovers and literature teachers. While the world of Indian fiction is fertile, now here is a fact. I mean, all of us know that Arabinda Adiga became very popular. But then, are we also going to look at the other side of it? He of course talks about globalization, he talks about the Carnivalist culture and all, but at some point of the time we find that there are certain compromises being made when he says, if you take a dip in the holy Ganges, you will come across places. Now, my point here is that why, in order to get the world, the attention we are compromising with our culture and showing to the outside world what is the inside story of India. I think the battles of home should be fought at home only and not abroad. Of course, every award-winning writer has got something or the other, but then we become, we become attracted towards them because of the award. In this connection, I feel really tempted to mention two names, especially two names. One is Rajkamal Jha and the other is Jeet Thayil. Rajkamal Jha, because we have an affinity since he belongs to Bihar, Bhagalpur. Recently, one of his works that came that actually depicts the Delhi incident, which all of us are famous with, right? And he has called it The City and the Sea. The City and the Sea, as a painful reminder of Nirbhaya tragedy, and dissolves the boundaries between fact and fantasy. Like that, another writer named Jeet Thayil, who is actually a poet as well as a novelist. Now, as I said in the beginning, we are actually depicting the modern day reality, and reality changes. That is why modern becomes postmodern. And so when we talk about how the life of Mumbai and how he himself, he was a drug addict, and his very famous novel Narcopolis, it actually created ripples in the mind of people. But then what he wanted was to create a sort of consciousness and awareness, because basically Thayil is a poet. And many of his works, namely, in one of, and he has also been awarded for, not for his novel, but for his poetry entitled These Errors Are Correct, for which he got the India Gandhi Award. Now we are thankful that not only Indian writers are getting awarded by Sahitya Akademi, but all of us know that how, close to awarded. Fine. Now this is the recognition that Indian authors are getting. Keep aside the thoughts that somebody gets an award only because he or she actually creates at the world level some sort of Indian weaknesses and all, but then here is a person who actually develops, describes, denotes India, and yet he is awarded. So India is actually emerging. So Thayil received Sahitya Akademi for these errors are correct, and he acknowledges the same as his best work of poetry. The collection was written only after the tragic death of his wife, Sakti Bhatt. What sets Thayil apart from a postmodern writer is his ability to use historical facts in his fictional works. Postmodern critic Hachian defined works like these as historiographic fiction, metafiction. Thayil actually uses his life experiences along with historical events related to history of the old Bombay and of the 60s and 70s. So still he is conscious as an Indian. And then he present the world also, he talks about 9/11 and all. So a writer, in true sense of the term, he should ask himself a question: what are we doing? Are we Englicizing India, or are we Indianizing English? So if a writer, Professor R.P. Singh will agree with me, if a writer Indianizes his Indian cultural roots and then establishes himself at the world level, then only we can say that this is the Indian consciousness, this is Indian thoughts. While many Indian writers and poets will labor hard to cater to the existing demands of the present-day globalized world, there is no dearth of writers who are re-invoking our lost tradition and myths. In this regard, while I have made a mention of some poets, but then I should also mention the name of a novelist who is actually creating a lot of noises and pleasures, and the name is Devdutt Patnaik. Now you see, not only Devdutt Patnaik, even Amish Tripathi. And in literary circles, we have certain reservations as to whether we should consider them as literary artists, literary writers or not. Then they are doing it. And in all the works, in a way, they are retelling Mahabharata. In the case of Amish Tripathi, he's actually talking about the Sivacharal trilogy and all. Let these also be the points of research. Here I differ with many of my friends that when we talk about the popular writers, there are many writers who have become popular. Of course, we all agree that they still require some more substance to be considered as literary writers. I think you know what I am getting at. Fine. There are likewise the world of poetry. As I mentioned one name, actually because of the publication and because of the vast media attention, there are some people who are not grabbing the attention. And one such name is Charufil Singh, and the other name is Gopi Krishna Kapur, who are continuously attracting readers' attention by delving deep into Indian mythological traditions. There are numerous such names who have already been explored, much and grabbed excessive media attention. Thus, through this talk, I have tried my best to focus how Indian English literature is not only responding to the emerging trends, but also reinventing Indian ethos by situating them in their writings. Be it the field of poetry, drama, or novel, Indian creative writers are accommodating themselves with the changing, no doubt. Yet, they are aware of reiterating and recovering their cultural past. We seem to have lost our cultural legacy or cultural past. And the need is to reinvent them by annexing themselves to the rituals of fertility. I do hope that serious readers and scholars of literature will participate in the fertility cult and make Indian English literature a power to reckon with. Before I conclude, I am tempted to mention or refer to the lines of Charufil Singh's Itching on Edge, where he says, that's a wonderful poetry collection, where not only he talks about, he takes a dig at Taj Mahal and he says that Taj Mahal was made at the cost of trillions of Mumtaz. Where he talks about, he refers to those trillions of Mumtaz as the wives of those laborers who actually did a lot in making Taj Mahal the Taj Mahal. And another work where he talks about in the same, there is a serenity in time shrouded all over into the perfidy of details. Satyavans are stolen monuments and Savitri sparrows of beaming gold. One does not win or lose woman in a culture of symbolic forms. Pandava lost glories to the top, giving way to satiric zone of ironic myth. My dear friends, even if there have been some lapses, it is time we corrected and we made our readers aware of those lapses. And I think only then we will be able to say with assertion that Indian writing has not only faced the trends, emerging trends, but is re-emerging, reinventing, and it is a new world where there is a renaissance of nativity myths and nativity songs. And when I was doing a book entitled, Nativity Myths and Nativity Songs, my focus into that book was to say Renaissance of Nativity. The Renaissance of Nativity, if that is visible, I don't know. Renaissance of Nativity, contemporary Indian literatures in English. I do believe that serious scholars, serious editors, and serious writers of Indian English literature took to their roots and tried to bring them and focus them anew in their writing so that India once again becomes what India is remembered for. Thank you very much. And I here stop my lecture, and I think I welcome you all, and I will be taking some of the questions, if possible, to the best of my abilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, I could not introduce you in the beginning due to some technical lag, but some personalities are there who need no introduction at all. Their oratory and their command of the topic tells a lot about them. We heard you started your talk from modernism, moved on to describe and define the different aspects through which literature, not only Indian English literature, but English literature in general has moved from the earliest time of history. Sir, you sensitized us with the need of the hour to focus on researches on subjects and issues of contemporary relevance, and your quotation from W.B. Yeats' Turning and Turning in the Widening Gyre was quite apt, and it was what you correctly said, some revelation is at hand. And that revelation of indigenous culture certainly will come. You focused on the emerging areas in Indian English literature, for instance, translation studies, Dalit literature, and the necessity to include film studies in our curriculum so that our curriculum will come at par with what is required in the 21st century. What you said, we cannot keep our eyes shut in the 21st century because we are living in a post-modern and post-colonial world is quite relevant, and all of us listening to you, since we are from literary background, we must understand this fact and follow what you wish us to. Then you focused on disability studies and other trends that are shaping in literature. Sir, it was quite wonderful listening to you, and your talk must have sensitized all the participants about the burning issues and the requirement of changes that must come in our academia and our research. Sir, thank you a lot for giving us your valuable time. It was a wonderful talk. Thank you from my side and from the side of participants and the entire organizing team of this conference. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sanket. If there are any questions, I love to take them.
If any participant has any question, please come forward and ask.
The names he mentioned were not very clear. The meaning spoke. Could you was wonderful, very nice.
Sir, Arunima ma'am says that if you could please send the abstract or the brief of your talk, that would be wonderful, because some of the names, since it is on web, so some of the names were not so clear. If you could,
It was not audible.
yeah, it was not audible. So if you could please send it, it would be great.
I'll do that. I'll do that.
Okay, sir. Thank you a lot.
Thank you so much.
Next, please. Next. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Invite.
Literature in order to broaden our horizons for how we perceive literature, the modern generation, how we perceive literature. But is it not a little, does it not create a sort of confusion when there are innumerable adaptations available? How do we choose which adaptation to include while indulging into films that parallel to the literature, the written form of the literature?
Okay, that's a nice question. You see, even many of the films which have been adapted, some of them have really made a lot of noises. For example, one of the Shakespeare's movies, which was adapted long time back, people say that that was actually the worst adaptation. But the question is, we are living in an age when we have several critics also, several theories also, and one theory, when one theory comes, the other theory also comes to correct it. Unless you have choices, how can you say this is good, this is bad? So it is good. You also can make a film on an iPhone. Others can also make a phone on an iPhone. But then distinction can be made. So it is good. When we have only one thing, you have no alternatives. But when there are so many, we have alternatives. The namesake has already been made. Can anyone make the namesake a better movie than what was done? Can anyone make Hamlet, the present day Hamlet, which has been converted, into a movie by Vishal Bharadwaj? Can there be? If there is, I think we must all welcome. We must all welcome. But that actually requires a lot of guts from the people who are going to do that. And it is not a question of creating confusion. It is a question of, augmenting more imagination, more reasoning, more logic. Fine? That is how you can. There are fierce winds everywhere. How you keep your boat going in the proper direction depends upon the sailor. How you row the boat, that is more important. Rajshree, I hope I have been able to answer your query.
Indeed, sir. I had another question. You put up the reference of polluted Ganges and how we are not presenting our nation in the best way possible on literary terms, even in the movies, in the web series, in dramas that we now witness. So my question is, are we not?
I'll take another 10 minutes. Yes, Rajshree, can you please repeat? I got a call. Please repeat.
No problem at all, sir. So I was referring to the part where you mentioned that a lot of writers, we've been portraying our country in not the best of ways. When you mentioned the polluted Ganges, the reference of the polluted Ganges by one of the very infamous writers. So why are we still depicting the caste and the regional differences? It's a global issue. It's not just a part of India. But when you say
Rajshree, to cut short your question, we believe in selling ourselves. It sells. Tell outside world that India has got the Ganges in a very polluted way. And you become not only very important, but you are selling yourself, isn't it? As I said, please go back to my lines. Battles of home should be fought at home only. Find something that attracts to the outside world. If we cater to them, perhaps we'll lose touch with our own culture, with our own heritage, with our own archetypes.
Exactly, so that's what I agree with, because we've been constantly representing our country, we're stereotyping our country in a way, if I'm right, because then when you talk of India, a lot of people are not even aware of what India is right now. We're still talking about the caste differences, we're still talking about the regional differences, but we do not talk about the advancement that we as a nation have come up to, and that we were long time back. So, how do we overcome that?
I look at it from a different viewpoint. I teach in a there is enough food for thought for us. Ambition, the ambition that Macbeth had, the overwhelming ambition, and the same overwhelming ambition is there in the selection, Jay, when the two boys, two brothers, they want to compete with each other, and then in another way, the other side of it is also shown, where so many unusual things are being said and so many unusual things are being acted. But what is selling there is cricket, the pulse of the today's world. Yes.
Understood. So thank you so much for shedding light on that. But and on that note, that has recently been adapted into a web series, The White Tiger. And I'm sure people must and should watch it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot. Since we are short of time, we would like to invite our next speaker, Dr. U.S. Ojha, sir. Dear participants, Professor Uday Shankar Ojha, sir, is with the University Department of English, Jayaprakash University, Chhapra. Presently, he is also undertaking the charge of Dean Students Welfare. He has published several books and more than 24 research papers, supervised more than a dozen PhD scholars, chaired several sessions at various international and national seminars and conferences, and he has given guest lectures at several seminars and conferences at national level. It would be a delightful experience listening to such a personality who has such a great administrative as well as academic experience. Sir, I welcome you on behalf of all the participants and the organizing team of this conference. Sir, please, the topic on which sir will talk with us is Cultural and Linguistic Diversity, Mapping Nostalgic Nativity in Indian English Writing. Sir, you are welcome to invite and please start your talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, Vice Chancellor of the University, and then I extend my heartfelt thanks to the most endearing Department of English, headed by Professor A.K. Bachchan Sahab, my other colleagues over there, Professor Arunima Sinha ji, Professor Punita Jha, Professor Kulanand ji, and other colleagues, especially Dr. Sanket Kumar Jha and Dr. Dastagir Alam. Then I am really thankful to my two friends from Lucknow University and from IIT Roorkee, Professor Api Singh and Professor Vinod Misra ji, for coming on this platform and meeting after a long time at least on this platform, that is the webinar that we are participating in. And I think I am audible, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. Well, already we have enjoyed the two beautiful lectures by the two prominent professors from different universities. And I think the audience must have enjoyed a lot. But I take the liberty of an audience which has already been devastated after 2 hours of lecture. And that is the reason that I will be the last speaker and I will not take much time. I will be trying to be precise. And the topic on which I will be speaking today is basically topic which really interested me also. The title is all about what is that? Cultural. Sorry, I'm missing the title also. In fact, what has happened that after doing the job of DSW and doing the welfare for the students, I have stopped doing welfare for myself as well.
Hello.
Okay. So, I would love to begin with my lecture. Okay. Well, we are to look into something very interesting today that has nothing to do with my any systematic, organized and meticulously structured in-depth study of the major trends or emerging trends in modern Indian English literature. Rather, it has been a hurried attempt on my part to jot down certain illuminating points from the vibrant literary landscape of our rich cultural heritage. And the title is already there, The Cultural Diversity and Our Literature. Yes, literary traditions have flourished in India with all their rich cultural diversity. These living literary traditions have survived in a variety of forms, even in the contemporary times, as lived experiences, through continuities, dynamism, and transmutations. Undoubtedly, to unify our cultural and linguistic diversity, our society has inevitably practiced accommodation, negotiation, and understanding of each other. Hence, languages go on incessantly evolving, growing, and acquiring the stage, what we call plurality of languages. This is very much evident in everyday interaction, when people never shy away from practicing frequent translation activities as natural translators. Our creative expressions in different languages at different points of time in Indian history are unmatched in world literary history, as Selden Pollock opines in his introduction to the book Literary Cultures in History. And I must acknowledge here with pleasure that it is the high time to negotiate afresh with Sufi and Bhakti poetry of medieval times, Dalit, tribal and women's voices across time and space, along with the literary traditions of modern times. The dynamic oral traditions of folklore and storytelling need to be restored from the periphery as to question the hegemony of the written over the oral. Here Ramanujan's The Flowering Tree, a beautiful short story based on a popular Kannada folk tale, demonstrates the significance of popular culture from the feminist point of view. As a woman-centered tale that shows the vulnerability of a woman like that of the flowering tree. Charming story of a poor girl becoming a flowering tree with the help of a ritual, and once her flowers are plucked by her sister, she turns out to be a girl again. Here the conflict of a young woman's desire to flower sexually and otherwise, as well as the fear of being ravaged, runs parallel. Now what we see that in this folk tale that has been wonderfully narrated by A.K. Ramanujan in that short story, it shows the metaphor used for a girl being compared with a tree, and it has got several connotations when we compare the girl with a tree. Well, once she is compelled to marry in the story with a prince, she is forced to become a tree in the bedchamber as well. That is the wrong place for her. Moreover, once her envious sister-in-law plucks not only the flowers from the girl turned tree, but also its branches mercilessly, she turns out to be a badly deformed human shape. No hands, no feet, and just half a body. Now this is the pathetic picture of the girl who had turned herself with the help of some ritual into a tree. Now she was a wounded carcass crawling into a gutter. And then in the story we find that at the end of the story, the remorseful prince finally gets his wife normal again by performing the rituals again. The crux of the story shows a strong connection between woman and nature. It has the element of ecofeminism as well, that metaphorically presents woman's biological and other kinds of creativity, symbolized by flowering. In fact, the objectification of woman is somewhere at the center of this tale. Further, the roots of India's literary traditions are deeply located in the rich soil of oral literatures of the tribes, and that forms one of the major branches of Indian English literature. As extracted from an essay by G.N. Divi, there is an urgent need to create a space for the study of tribal literature within the framework of canonized written texts. Otherwise, the forces of urbanization, print, culture and commerce will further lead to the marginalization and ultimately dismissal of tribal literature and their languages and literary cultures. Undoubtedly, numerous attempts have been made for the collection and conservation of tribal languages and their literatures. It is heartening to note that some of the tribal groups like the Santhal and Munda have been very prominent and dominant in the literary streams, fighting their way out against colonialism and the local socio-political exploitative cultures. At this juncture, a small glimpse into the rich repository of folk songs expressing the tribal vision of life seems to be inevitable, and I love to quote a small but metaphorically beautiful Munda song entitled as Songs of Birth and Death from an anthology, Painted Words, edited by G.N. Divi. Now I read the poem for you. My mother, the sun rose. The sun was born. The first line is, my mother, the sun rose, his son was born. My mother, the moon rose, a daughter was born. A son was born, the cow shed was depleted. And a daughter was born, the cow shed filled up. So that is the small poem. Now in this poem we find that the song deals with the birth of a son and a daughter. And the tribes are normally associated with nature. They live in the harmony of nature. And that is the reason that we have images from nature here. But the most important part to be taken notice of is that once a son is born, the cow shed is depleted, scattered. But once a daughter is born, the cow shed is supposed to be filled up. Life in harmony with nature can be noticed here. It is evidently true with the tribes. And such songs are sung at the time of birth of a son or daughter with rhythmical folk tunes and dance. So the birth of a daughter is equated with a cowshed full of cows, and the son's birth causes its depletion. Obviously, the daughter is more precious in the light of their various economic, social and ritual activities. Now I would like to move to another song. That is a Kondh song by the Kondh tribe distributed over the districts of Andhra Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra and Odisha. The translated song refers to their belief that the spirit of the dead people of their tribes are normally reluctant to leave their homes and areas, and they are having a possibility of harming them or their tribes at times, since they are unable to participate in the day-to-day earthly life. So it has been a custom to offer gifts such as a baby fowl to their spirits or to their souls. promise to do anything to make the spirit happy, but in return, the spirits are also requested not to trouble them with their visits. Now I would like to read the poem that discusses all these beautiful tribal beliefs. The poem is like this. This we offer to you. We can. Because we are still alive. If not, how could we offer at all? And what? We give a small baby fowl. Take this and go up. Whichever way you came. Go back. Return. Don't inflict pain on us after your departure. Now we can see in this poem also, it has so nicely depicted the faith of the tribe, that how the spirits are liable to cause harm to the local tribes and how they are offered offerings just for the sake of safety of the tribals. In this connection, I would mention the name of one such great poet from my own native land, who has now become very famous, Bihari Thakur. And it is definitely very heartening matter of pleasure that lots of work is being done in IFLU, at BHU, or at several universities in the field of Bhojpuri literature. Only recently, one of my friends, senior friends, and who is currently the MLC of our constituency, Professor Virendra Narayan Yadav, has edited the book on Bihari Thakur, and he has made a beautiful collection of all his works that is known as Bihari Thakur Rachnavali. His famous play, Videsiya, was turned into a film, I think 40 or 50 years back. And the film is also titled as Videsiya. Only recently, when we were introducing in our university the current syllabus, the CBCS syllabus, in one of the papers where we have to tackle film and literature, we introduced this film, Videsiya, by Bihari Thakur. And I was very happy while Professor Vinod Kumar, my friend, was discussing about film and literature, and he dealt in detail with several films and put the valiant and very important matter before all our researchers and before all our listeners, that how film studies have become such an important part of our syllabus. Apart from tribal literature and oral literature, one of the major trends in Indian English literature is Dalit literature as well, about which already so much of discussion has been made. But I would like to summarize it, and especially for my students listening to me. The Dalit literature that commenced in Maharashtra and has found a special position in Marathi literary traditions, which is now progressing towards becoming a pan-India movement. Dalit literature is not merely a set of literary work by erstwhile victims of untouchability, but also has a serious passion of a social movement. The term Dalit, verbatim translates to broken, depressed. It is rather a term of pride for the people who have suffered for countless numbers of millennia. The underlying force beneath this literature is the anti-Brahminical movement of Mahar caste, a very prominent caste in Maharashtra, the Dalit caste, I should say, which began in the 20th century and reached its zenith under Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. The Mahar people had to act as servants, messengers, disposer of the dead and life in inferior villages during the British Raj. They are a Marathi speaking caste, obviously, and are found in almost in all Marathi villages. They are bilingual. They have not disclaimed caste and are largely Buddhist, up to almost 80%, due to the protracted suppression and exploitation that they have suffered. Their main profession have been as drummers and musicians, dancers, comedians and singers of the tamasa. In addition to other untouchables in the area, they had to live in isolated villages Also, the village temple and wells are inaccessible to them, daring to access which they could be inflicted with draconian punishment. Prior to 19th century, the only Dalit voice from Mahar caste known to the world was that of Chokamela, a Bhakti saint of the 14th century. Thematically, Chokamela's poetry mostly deals with glorification of Lord Vitthal, devotion, but occasionally protest against untouchability and social inferiority is also seen. However, I wish to quote a poem here named as Habit by F.M. Sinde, a very prominent Marathi poet who expresses the agony of the underprivileged. He shows how Dalits turned out to be habituated to their subjugation, that they stopped feeling humiliated and continue to suffer extreme exploitation without a whimper of protest. I would like to quote that poem for you. Yes. Once you are used to it, you never afterwards feel anything. Once you are used to it, you never afterwards feel anything. Your blood never more congeals nor flows, for weight mud has been slapped all over your bones. Once you are used to it, even the sorrow that visits you, sometimes in dreams, melts away. Embarrassed, habit is not used to breaking out. Well, in this poem also, the catastrophe, or you can say the catastrophic picture of a Dalit is comparable to a clay statue, lifeless, silent, incapable of protest or any kind of resistance. The poem dwells upon the metaphor for passivity of Dalits, out of its habitual inertness, and react against an unjust system. Similarly, we have another poem to cite over here by N.T. Rajkumar. His poems also articulate protests against the caste and class oppression that Dalit people have been experiencing for ages. To quote a few lines from an untitled poem by N.T. Rajkumar, I can't touch the shadow of your wing. I will be born again and again as a devil, a ghost, as Kali and Isaki. As the vengeful furies, I will terrorize you and follow you. So, such is the protest which is visible in the poems of Dalit writers that has really become a very important part of our Indian English literature today. Apart from these sections, we have several other sections which have come across and which have taken prominent place in Indian English literature, especially in the recent times when we saw the catastrophe of COVID-19. We saw lots of webinars conducted on that topic also, and we started talking more about diasporic sensibility, home, retreating migration, and then the pandemic. In this context, I would like to say that, in times of prosperity and comfort, the unaccustomed earth also happens to be a rich pasture land for the diaspora writers. Very often the dispersal of diaspora is under some compulsion only as history has witnessed. But it is also true that man has wandered in search of bread and butter, a better life, even to the unexplored and uncertain geographical terrains offering riches. But as home is the ultimate reality, and in the diasporic context, this reality has been more realized by countless writers from time to time. I would be quoting a few lines from the poetry of Sir Walter Scott here. Reads there the man with soul so dead, who never to himself had said, this is my own, my native land, whose heart within him never hath burned, as home his footsteps he hath turned, for wandering on a foreign strand. Well, whether it is imperialism, trade, or labor migration, the materialistic pursuits are very much there as the root cause of migration. And in the present perspective, I think 2 years back, or 1 year back rather, in the successful running of our industries and metropolitan cities have heavily depended on the poor workers, laborers migrated from their villages. In no way it can be denied that both the parties have been benefited. And yes, the struggle for survival becomes easier in the better economic and newer cultural space of the countries of their adoption. So, I would have to refer here the epigraph posted on the first page of Jhumpa Lahari's famous collection of stories, Unaccustomed Earth. And the epigraph comes from Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Custom House. Human nature will not flourish any more than a potato if it be planted and replanted for too long a series of generations in the same worn-out soil. My children have had other birthplaces, and so far as their fortunes may be within my control, shall strike their roots into unaccustomed earth. So what we see that diasporic literature has also emerged with all these theoretical formulations, and in Indian English writing, we have several prominent writers who have come up with all such novels and creative writings. And in the current condition, we saw the possibilities of pandemic studies also, pandemic literature also. So, finally, as the time is not much, I would like to share that today the story of the status of English language and literature in India is quite interesting, and we will be sharing our views at such platforms whenever it is possible. I am thankful, though I was not really getting much time because of the syndicate and senate that I was facing for the last few days. But I am happy that I was invited to deliver a lecture, though I could not do really much justice with the given time, but still I am thankful to the Department of English, to the host for inviting me and giving me a platform. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for sparing time for us from your busy schedule. We all know how much engagements you have as a dean of Jayaprakash Chhapra University. Sir, your talk was amazing. You gave us several examples from Indian English poetry and show us how Indian oral tradition has its root in several recent theories that we think are a product of the European culture. You gave us some lines of a poem and established how it had ecofeminism in it. Then you focused on Dalit folk songs and Dalit literature from its origin and throughout several phases how it has developed, how it started from anti-Brahminical movement in Maharashtra in the 20th century and reached its zenith under Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, and from then onwards Dalit literature became a mainstream form of literature. Then you moved on to diaspora studies and also focused on different issues and aspects that are there in Indian diaspora writings. You summed up with giving us a glimpse of how new trends are emerging, such as pandemic literature, digital literature, and disability literature. So your talk was wonderful. If any of the participants have any question from sir, they are welcome.
अच्छा, हम बाद में बात करते हैं प्रोग्राम में वो।
Sir, I think now we should conclude this session, and I would like to invite Professor Punita ma'am for the valedictory session and giving her vote of thanks to the speakers, the participants, and others. Punita ma'am.
As we've almost come to an end of this illuminating e-conference, because we've been discussing the trends, the emerging trends in modern English literature, I would like to extend my thanks to all the people who have contributed in the successful for this successful conference, and it has successfully been highlighted by all the eminent speakers. They highlighted on the major points. So I deem it's my proud privilege to propose the vote of thanks in this valedictory session of the e-conference organized by the Department of English, LNMU. First and foremost, I would like to thank the chief patron who is the main leader behind this, the chief patron of this conference, Honorable Vice Chancellor of LNMU, Professor S.P. Singh, for his motivation, and I sincerely thank VC sir for his guiding vision and motivation in organizing this e-conference. We are sincerely thankful to our Pro-Vice Chancellor of this university, Professor Dolly Sinha, for her support and encouragement. She spared her valuable time to grace the inaugural session as the chief guest and enlighten the students by her speech. Ma'am, she has left, she was there in the inaugural session. Her speech was very informative and the concepts were explained in a clear manner. It was specific and compact. I would like to state that the mind is not a vessel that needs filling. In fact, it's dry wood that needs igniting, and ma'am had successfully, means in the inaugural session, she had ignited it. So once again, I would like to thank her. I would be failing in my duty. I would like to thank Dean Madam also, who was present in the inaugural session, and maybe she is online with us. So Dean Humanities, Professor Preeti Jha, she is also the head of the Department of Maithili. So I thank her also. I would be failing in my duty if I do not extend my gratitude and thanks to the President of this one-day e-conference, Head of the Department of English, Professor A.K. Bachchan sir, who is the main, he is our leader, and we are proud to have him as our head in the department. Now I would like to just speak something, like what actually literature is and why this idea of selecting this, the emerging trends and Indian literature and nothing else. We are Indians and we are very much, and we are professors of English. So sir also in his keynote address, he highlighted in a nutshell, he highlighted, all the trends which we have been discussing in the forum by our eminent professors, and he just brought out the major points and the major aspects were brought out by our head sir, because in his keynote address he clarified how does the trend change from time to time. So none of the trends, the emerging trends like Dalit literature or the post-colonial, the effect of colonialism, what is modernity and how we have just progressed into post-modernity, that was also one of the basic points. The translation, which is also one of the major points, and this has been discussed from by the introduction of the keynote speaker, that is our head did it, Professor A.K. Bachchan, and all the three eminent professors have also highlighted on this point. In fact, we went a bit further when we had these professors, speaking on those regional, the translation of all the regional literature and even the adaptation literature, adaptation of film. How are we adapting it, and how beautifully, how technology has developed, and for us it has become easier to coordinate and link ourselves with the global world.
Yes, ma'am.
So we are able to understand through translation. We are able to understand there is a cross cultural interaction. Our country is a multilingual country. So in that state, in order to project our culture, our tradition and our myth, all the basic requirement is that we need to translate this work and give it out and be and just present it, project and to focus the Indian ethos, which I think Binod Mishra, Professor Binod Mishra was highlighting, and Professor R.P. Singh, Professor U.S. Ojha also, through the examples of his poem, he just highlighted on it. We have to have that Indian ethos in the literature which we are doing. And new innovations. This is an age of transition, this is an age of experimentation, and we are trying to project that we are Indians. It is literature which projects everything. So, I would like to also clarify one more point, that is so what literature has done to us and how literature is important in establishing our own identity. Yes, this was also one of the points which has been discussed, and it has been, been clearly discussed, and then how it can be debatable. What are the topics we should attempt in our research? All these technical, the thematic, and all the structures have been dealt in this conference. So naturally, I'm really thankful to all the eminent professors, who just threw light on all these things. Let me come to first Bachchan sir. This is an age indeed, he just expressed that it is an age of transition. And really it is. And that is what I'm also trying to specify. And he highlighted on the major elements, which the Indian writers are, just using it, and then how it is being brought out. Previously what happened, our literature was there, and we had a number of literature. During the British rule, we were not educated, we were not granted the freedom of education. It was after that, and only those people who could go abroad, like, all the great leaders, they went, who could afford it, they went abroad, they studied, but they were not given the respect and honor which they should have got. And it was after independence, it was literature which projected our views, our thoughts, And then we got a recognition. We did not have an individual identity previously. It was Commonwealth literature, and then after that, gradually, after the colonial, it became Indian English literature. So our identity, a separate identity, we have it in the postmodernism. So, and these writers were, and it began with the advent of the three major. This has also been discussed, by our other eminent speakers, and we had three eminent speakers from three different places, and they accordingly, they have given their viewpoints, and they have visualized also, these professors, they have visualized where this literature is going to lead us. And it is already, our general assumption that we have reached a far way, and we are going to be the best. And we are going to be the connecting link between all. Now, I would like, first of all, I would like to thank one of the most eminent professors, and in fact, when we used to come to the department, we used to say that he is the most youngest professor also, but old and young does not matter. You should communicate your views and thought with a very clear concept, because we are basically teachers. What we communicate is what the students grasp. And that is exactly in a very simple, lucid manner. Professor R.P. Singh, who is an eminent professor, Department of English and Modern European Language, University of Lucknow, has done. So, he just clarified and he gave us a very practical approach, on how it should be handled. His topic, he is an eminent professor, and he's a writer, he's a great writer. He has also edited a number of books, and all that was finally said in all the fields, and his title was, his scholarly lecture was on emerging trends emerging trends in Indian English literature. He, right from the beginning, he divided it into three phases and all, and he just clearly, just to clarify all his points, he dealt on all the three phases, and finally from modern, the transition period from modern to postmodern, he dealt with the technical developments also, how the innovative ideas and experimentation was done, and it has been successful in paving the way for post-modern Indian English literature. So, and all his suggestions were, it has to be taken into our viewpoint. He dealt on all the other topics also, the changing dimension, the struggle for survival, and he highlighted and he emphasized all the three aspects in the context of, and he also stressed that the book as a text, it should not be taken up as a commodity. We should identify ourselves, and we should negotiate it with the environment. So it is not only, so in this materialistic world, we have to consider, we have the ecological study. So he referred to all the modern critical theories also. He suggested various topics, which should be researched on, and he, I think he has motivated the research scholars also. So these were some of his major things, concept which he has done. And now I think our next speaker, Professor Binod Mishra, who was from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Roorkee, Uttarakhand. He has his topic, Rituals of Fertility, Re-invoking Traditions in Indian English Literature. It was really, it was something very much unexpected. And we were expecting, that what is Sir going to speak on the rituals. And really, I was confused in the beginning that when he said that, and re-invoking tradition, just brought out the main concept. Because I remember the lines of T.S. Eliot also. He says that we have to be creative, but we cannot negate our tradition and culture. In order to move forward, in order to create something which is new, and we have to rely on the traditions, we have to look back on our traditions. Then only we can create something new, and that creative work is more valuable. This is exactly what he has tried to communicate through his scholarly lecture on rituals of fertility, and this is how he has invoked traditions by giving various examples from Dalit literature also, and all the forms of literature from the diasporic writers also. So we have, people who have done their experimentations on this form. I would like to mention that he is also one of the best poets, I've come across. I've read his poems, and he's publishing book after book on poems also. So he is creative, his inborn quality of creativity. And he is working over there in IIT Roorkee. So as an English professor, and I think he is just, spreading, the message of being more human towards being human, because we belong to the human race. So he is, I don't know, I salute him because he has done something and he has presented a very new topic, and he has suggested also various topics for these research scholars also who can do it. Next, I would like, finally, I would like to thank Professor U.S. Ojha, our third most important professor, who has been coming down because Chhapra is close by. He is from JP University, Department of English, and then he is also, as we know that he is the dean of that students' welfare. So we can guess he's dean. His talk on cultural and linguistic diversity, mapping nostalgic nativity in Indian English writing, has been very enriching. In the minimum time, I thank you, because from your busy schedule, you took out time for us, and you have always been doing so earlier also, and this time also. But in the minimum time, in a nutshell, you communicated your subject matter in a very enlightened manner. And it was very clear, your examples, through examples and all that, you stated, what is cultural and linguistic diversity, because whenever we are talking, we get Sankeet. उसको भी thanks दे दो. Yes. So yeah, he is naturally, he is my colleague. So on the way, finally, first of all, let me continue with the thing. There was a slight distraction, because now the person sitting beside me, this assistant professor from Chandana College is also there, and he deserves to be thanked, which I will be doing. But just excuse me for the slight diversion and distraction. The thing is, sir, you have been coming off and on, and you have done your, you have just, whatever your through your scholarly lectures, by giving examples and reading various poems, you have successfully communicated the concept of nostalgic nativity in Indian literature. So I see that you are tired and you're having a cup of tea, because we've been listening to you again and again. You've been coming to our department and always helping us. So thank you very much. And now the turn. Okay. Now the turn comes to thank one of the person, who has been sitting behind and doing everything. That is the co-convener. And now let me come to the main convener, Professor Arunima Sinha. She is the ex-HOD, Department of English, and she is the convener, the motivator, and she is also like our guardian, as sir referred, and she has been guiding us to do things, and she has been motivating all the students, and we teachers also seek motivation from her. My special thanks to Arunima Sinha, the convener of this, and I would like to honor her, because in the beginning, in the inaugural session, I would like to give her a bouquet, and I would like to thank her for all that she has done. I would like to thank both the conveners, that is.
But he deserves both thanks.
No, both of you are equally, really.
And Dastagir.
Wait.
Thank you. And now, I give this bouquet to both of you.
No, there is enough.
एक मिनट उधर पिक्चर एक
Today it is the entire department that in these hard times. Here, Patelji, sir.
Thank you so much, Punita. I disturbed you in between. But I thought you'd forget something. That's why.
No, I don't forget anybody.
And Dastagir also. He has been always a very good compeer.
And
no, it's for you.
नहीं हम संगीत के बाद कोई बोलने वाले थे arrange everything in a systematic manner so that I don't leave out the main people who are behind this. And of course Ganesh is also there. Because without him it would
Ganesh
not
Bhagwan is there.
It is there. I have in mind. I have Professor H.K. Singh. So thank you for all you have been done. And next I would like to thank Dastagir also, who has really lent his cooperation in helping this e-conference to be a great success. And if I miss Professor S.K. Singh, head of the Department of Commerce and Management, we would have not had this hall. It is just because he, gave his consent to conduct the e-conference in his hall. I therefore thank him. So he
all the teachers of the department.
And I thank all the staff and teachers of the Department of Commerce and Management. Now I extend, yes, I have not finished yet. There is 5 minutes, I know, because we've been waiting for a long time. Now, I would like to thank the advisory committee as well, who are the other members, like Mustaq, the registrar, University Registrar, Professor Mustaq Ahmed, and the two people who have been silently waiting over here, and they are also, in our group, and they have also contributed in the making of this conference. That is Professor Kulanand Yadav, ex-HOD, and Dr. Ex-Controller, and Professor A.K. Singh, who is the ex-DR2. He is now back in our department, and our department is almost complete. So I would like to thank A.K. Singh is here, and I would like to thank Manju Chaturvedi also, the head department of MLSM, and the others. I think they are offline also. There are a number of principals, students, and the dignified delegates, and the students, research scholars, and all the people who have made this all the students. But I would really, if I miss Ganesh's name, who is in the distance education and who has successfully sat through this e-conference to make it a success, to see that it is not interrupted by voice, to see if the photographs are coming, to see if it is we are audible or not. Everything has been managed. This is an age of technology, and this computer engineer, he has helped us a lot, and I really thank him from the core of my heart. And finally, I thank all the participants and the organizers, and of course the eminent professors who gave their contribution in making this e-conference a grand success. Thank you.
Congratulations, sir.
And even the person.
Let us all congratulate ourselves.
Thank you also for giving such a detailed.
YouTube पे हटा दीजिए. Recording हो गई है.
प्रणाम सर.